Hello. Welcome to Coffee Connections. I've got my coffee with me. I have many cups. This is just my favorite one. One of my favorite. I have two in this same color and they have different stickers on them. But this is I have Autism Mom on this one and my autism sticker. My other big one says Survivor, which coincidentally, that's what we're going to be talking about today. My name is Heather Dearmore. I am the owner, along with my husband, of Colors of the Alphabet Indoor Playground in North Richland Hills, Texas. And we built this space with kids with special needs in mind, more specifically kids with autism, because my daughter has autism. So I've started doing Coffee Connections to talk about our autism journey and share some tips and stories and hopefully give some inspiration to all of you who are going through the same thing. My daughter is 8 and she was diagnosed at 20 months old. So we've been on this journey for a little over 6 years now. So today, though, I wanted to talk about something a little different than our autism journey. They kind of run together, but I wanted to share my cancer story, which I've mentioned before, my cancer story, and I know a lot of people that come into the playground will hear me mention my cancer journey, diagnosis. Acacia was diagnosed with autism in February of 2019, and I was diagnosed with cancer in November of 2019, so it was like our two bookends of 2019, which was a very, very challenging year, and 2020, as I was in treatment in 2020. But I kind of wanted to share this part of my journey because it does go along with our autism journey. And Acacia was in therapies, and then we had to pause those. And I just kind of wanted to share how that also affected her. And I was going back and forth whether or not to share it. And this morning on my drive to work, I just kept hearing, share your story, share your story, share your story. So I think God was telling me, share your story today. I probably will have to make this a 2-part series. I was taking notes all morning and just making sure I hit on all my important details. And I think it's going to be a long video. So I'll probably split it up into 2 videos. Real quick, though, before we go into that, I wanted to just share some autism wins. So Acacia, as you know, I just said she's 8 years old now. She's come a long way. She went from being completely nonverbal when she was diagnosed to now has a huge vocabulary. But last week, as an autism parent, you probably understand that it's kind of hard to get them to do even just the smallest tasks around the house. And it's wonderful when you don't even have to remind them to do something and they just do it. So last week I was getting her into the bathtub and we have our normal routine that we do. And she took off her clothes and she just went into the closet and put them in the hamper and came out for her bath. And I didn't even have to tell her. I was like, usually I'll say like, where do your clothes go? And she'll say, in the hamper. Well, she just went and put them in the hamper. And I was like, oh my gosh, so awesome. And also part 2 to that is in the same evening, she was in the bath and she was going through her alphabet, scripting the alphabet. And you can't stop her in the middle of that. She's got to finish it. So she was at like R, I think. And I said, okay, when you're done with the alphabet, we're going to get out. So go ahead and pull the plug. So I walked away and I heard her finishing up her alphabet. R is for rainbow, going through the alphabet. And when she was done, she pulled the plug and I came back in and I was like, wow, that's awesome, girlfriend. I was so excited that she listened and she did it. And then the last thing, she was downstairs going through the alphabet again. We're big on the alphabet and she cycles through it and we're back on it right now. So everything is all about the alphabet again right now. And she was doing all the letters and she got to V. And I said, she said V is for, and she said a couple different words. And I threw out Venus. I was like, V is for Venus. She's like, Venus is a planet. And she's so excited when she says it, even though she knows, like she said something like this 1,000 times. It's so exciting every time. And she said, how many moons does Venus have? Venus has no moons. And she just scripts. And I had to Google it because I was like, does Venus have any moons? I didn't know. Venus has no moons. So I'm going to check that again, but I'm pretty sure that was the planet that she said. Does Venus have moons? Venus does not have any moons. So yeah, I had to Google it as mom. My 8-year-old is smarter than me, which I've told her a million times now that she's smarter than mommy is. Okay, so this is my cancer story. Like I said, Acacia was diagnosed with autism in February of 2019. I have many, many, many notes over here that I want to make sure I don't forget to tell you. So I will refer to these every now and then. She was making amazing progress. I had shared in, I think, my very first video about when we got diagnosed and then when she started her therapies and how well she was doing. We were doing speech therapy through ECI. We were starting to go to like little library visits with her therapist. We would meet up with other families and we'd do all these, like they would play with water beads and she'd have all these like stations for them to go to work on speech and everything. We were starting to do those sorts of things. She was doing amazing. She was saying a lot of words. Her vocabulary was growing. And on July 19th of 2019, I woke up in pain. My right arm hurt. This upper arm shoulder area. I went to make my coffee like normal. And I woke up, went to my coffee cupboard, went to go grab my coffee cup, whatever one of the hundreds I have. And my arm just dropped. Like I lost all strength and it just fell. So I thought, well, that's weird. And I thought, okay, maybe I just pulled something. I remember I texted my dad and he said, just take some ibuprofen. You'll be fine. No big deal. The pain didn't go away. It slowly got worse. So I went to see a primary care doctor. I was also having really bad neuropathy at this time. I didn't know what that meant. I remember I even thought like, do I have MS? Like I was just thinking all crazy things, but I literally never, ever, ever thought cancer. That was never in my thought process. So I went to see a primary care doctor. They did blood work, lab work. Everything came back normal. I went to a chiropractor. They told me I had bursitis. I don't know where they got that from. I went to see a naturopathic doctor and he did some scans of my body. Not like a typical MRI or CAT scan or anything like that. It was just like this machine that he had that would be like for homeopathic medicine. And he did show me that a lot of inflammation was in this area, but we didn't quite know what that meant. He had just told me like, change your diet and here's some supplements. We did like paleo. It was like no carbs unless it was like sweet potatoes. I remember I ate a lot of like ground beef and peas, and I was miserable because I wasn't enjoying what I was eating, but I was also in pain. But I was dropping weight quickly, which I had still been trying to lose my baby weight because Acacia was only 2. So I was like, okay, well, this is a nice perk. At least I'm losing weight here. But I ended up going to see a physical therapist because I thought, okay, maybe I just need some physical therapy to work on my arm and make me feel better and help me. So the physical therapist, I wasn't feeling any better. He was doing these like ice things. He like wrapped my arm after I worked out and it was like these big old ice packs and wasn't helping. I was getting up like 2 times a week in the morning and I would go before, I was married to Acacia's dad at the time. So my ex-husband, I would go before he had to go to work. So then I could come home and be with Acacia while he was at work. So I was there at like 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, getting all these like exercises in. I was at home trying to do these stretches and exercises. I was not feeling good at all. I was not feeling any better. And he told me, when I asked the physical therapist, he told me, oh, well, it's just because you waited too long to come in to work out your injury. And I was like, I don't remember ever having an injury. So it didn't make sense to me. But I continued to do the physical therapy. I had started getting allergy season for us is really bad because we're from California. So I remember I was sick around this time as well. I had a really bad cough. Acacia also had a cough and we had some congestion, and Acacia got better, but I did not get any better. I was coughing so much, and every time I would cough, it would cause a shooting pain to go through my arm, and it was just absolutely miserable. So by Halloween, I was miserable. I was not good. We didn't do anything that year for Halloween. We didn't go anywhere. By that point, I was, let's see, I had lost all range of motion. I couldn't pick Acacia up anymore. I couldn't drive anymore. I could barely brush my own hair. We didn't leave the house for a couple of weeks, which I hate for Acacia. I hated for Acacia because, as I told you in my first video, I think it was second video, where I told you all the things that I did once I got Acacia's diagnosis. One of those things was leaving every day and trying to get Acacia into new environments and get her out in the world and trying to change up her routine all the time. So at this point, I was really, really struggling mentally because I was like, oh my gosh, I can't go anywhere with her. She doesn't do well when we're stuck inside all day. So when my ex-husband would be home with us or on the weekends, we would go try to do things, but he had to drive. I couldn't put her in her car seat anymore. I couldn't do any of those things. I even remember, I also have pictures because I remember I just wanted to like document everything because I didn't know what was going on, and I'm glad I did now. But I took pictures of my house at that time, and I am a neat freak, and there was just stuff everywhere. I think every single dish at the time was dirty. I couldn't wash dishes. If you were to look at it from the outside, you would just think this mom has given up, but it was really that I just really couldn't do anything. So as November approached and Thanksgiving was getting closer, I talked to my ex-husband at the time, and I told him that I really thought that I needed to go home to be with my parents in California, because I thought maybe I just needed more physical therapy, more rest. Maybe I needed some sort of surgery. I remember the physical therapist had mentioned something about my rotator cuff. So I thought, okay, maybe I just need this minor rotator cuff surgery. And then once I got that done, I'll be fine. But I needed to be able to get that looked at. And I was a stay-at-home mom, and I had a child with special needs. So it was really difficult. But during all of this, I was still having our ECI therapist come to the house. So we were still doing therapy, and Acacia was, like I said, making great progress. But once I realized that I probably needed to go to California to get some help, because it was really just me and my ex-husband here. Like, we didn't have any family or anything here. So I felt like it was best to go home to stay with my parents for a little bit. And this was right before Thanksgiving. So he was sad because he was going to be home for Thanksgiving alone. But he was like, do what you got to do. So I remember still very vividly, I met Acacia's therapist, and I told her that we were going to have to pause our ECI therapies. And I was so upset about that. But she did say, when you come back, we'll start up again. When she's 3, we'll get her into the preschool. Like, it was still, this is still going to be the process. We're not just going to stop her therapies altogether. We're just going to put them on pause. And I feel like I'm one of the housewives now, because Dorinda Medley, if you're a housewife watcher, I was on pause. Anyways, so I was really worried about flying alone with Acacia. Oh, and I'm getting a phone call for Colors of the Alphabet. Sorry about that. I will get back with you shortly if this is you calling. I was worried about flying alone with Acacia. So as you can imagine, if you have a 2-year-old, or if you've ever had a 2-year-old, especially one with autism, thinking about flying alone with them is terrifying, and being in excruciating pain, wondering what that's going to be like, it was even more terrifying. So I was really nervous about the flight, but I did call TSA ahead of time. I did the whole TSA cares, letting them know we were going to be coming, setting all of that up. They were wonderful. They helped me go through security. I had my stroller. Acacia did amazing. She was so perfect. She loved the flight. We took a nonstop flight to San Diego, and she did great. And even now, she's still a wonderful flyer. So I got really, really fortunate in that area. When I got back to California, my parents took over. They really helped with Acacia. So that same day, I remember I was like sitting in their living room, and I was starting to call local doctors. I was like, okay, I'm going to try to get an appointment ASAP. Well, this was right before Thanksgiving. So everybody was telling me the soonest you'll be able to get in is like after the new year. And I was just so defeated, because I thought, I'm in so much pain. How am I going to make it till the new year? And also, I flew here. I shouldn't say like I would have done things differently, because obviously everything works out for a reason. And I really feel like God had me he was right there with me the whole time. So everything happens for a reason. But if things didn't happen so quickly, I think I would have tried making appointments here while I was still in Texas and then getting out there for my appointment. But anyways, that's, like I said, I still think everything worked out perfectly for me. So let's see. The next day after we arrived, my mom had taken us to a new indoor play place in our mall. I'm from Temecula, so it was in the Temecula Mall, and Acacia loved it. It was like soft play. There was like a ball pit and a little market, and of course she loves the market because fruits and veggies are her life. And I was chasing Acacia around, and there was a spot where it went from like a piece of padded flooring to a different level flooring, and I went to like almost trip. I didn't trip, but I went to like catch myself, and just that movement of trying to catch myself from falling, I can't even describe the pain that I felt. It was horrible. So it turns out that most likely I had fractured my arm again in that moment, but I didn't know it at the time. I just thought, oh my gosh, why do I keep getting worse? So that evening, it was a Friday evening, and I was at my parents' house with them, and they were helping me take care of Acacia. And my dad said, why don't you go to like an urgent care and see if they can do an x-ray and just see what's going on? And I will say, I went to see a primary care doctor, a chiropractor, a physical therapist, and none of them had ever recommended getting an x-ray. None of them had ever said, hey, why don't we just get an x-ray and see what's going on? That was never an option. So when my dad said that, I was like, yeah, that's a smart thing to do. Let me go do that. So they put Acacia to bed, and I went out and went to the urgent care in Temecula. And I was also still coughing a lot, which was really uncomfortable. And so that was also my question when I got there was, hey, can I get an x-ray? I'm in a lot of pain, but I've also got this cough that's really annoying. So I think in that moment, I was like more worried about my cough, because I remember when I talked to my ex-husband that evening, I was in the drive-thru of the pharmacy, and I remember like just talking about my cough, and silly me, it's like I had forgotten about my arm. I don't know. So we did the x-ray. They gave me some meds for my cough, and they told me to hold on, the whole, let's wait, we're going to look at your x-ray. Doctor came back in, and he said, hey, you have holes in your bone. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? And he's like, worst case scenario, it's like a benign tumor. And I was like, okay. I was just so confused. I had no idea what that meant. Never heard of that situation. I didn't see the image. He didn't show me at that moment. He just said, we'll give you a call and we'll refer you out if we need to or whatever. Like, it was no big deal to them. They were just like, oh, it's probably nothing. At worst case scenario, it's a benign tumor. That was not the worst case scenario. So that was the last time I drove for over 6 months. I went from the urgent care because Acacia wasn't with me. So I wasn't getting on the freeway or anything. It was just side roads in Temecula. So I went to the urgent care, then went to get my prescription for my cough. And that was when I mentioned I was on the phone. And then I got back home, and Acacia was already asleep, and we were in the same bed. So I went to go lay down with her, and I was just laying in bed, and my phone rang. It was probably like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And it was a voicemail from the urgent care, and saying that they were concerned about my x-ray. And by this point, my parents were already asleep. So I just, did what people do. And I got on Google. What does it mean when you have holes in your bone? It's either osteoporosis or bone cancer. And I was like, well, I don't have osteoporosis. That's like for old people. So I just thought, okay, bone cancer, like what? I didn't sleep that night. I was freaking out. I could not sleep, couldn't shut my brain off. So the next morning I told my parents what the voicemail said, and I told them that I was worried about cancer. And my dad, I remember he just kind of laughed it off. He's like, no, that's not possible. There's no way this is cancer. So as soon as the urgent care, when they opened for business, I called right away. And the doctor who had seen me the night before he wasn't there at that moment, but they did like say, hold on one second. They put me on hold. They went to go check my chart, came back, and the doctor said, Yeah, it looks like we're really concerned about your X-ray and we're concerned about it being cancer. So we really think you should go get it checked out as soon as possible, immediately. And so I was like, okay. And I hung up the phone and I was in the garage. I remember we like always took phone calls in the garage. Um, I went back in and my mom was there with my daughter and my dad had gone to work that morning. It was a Saturday, but my dad sometimes worked on Saturdays. And I walked back in and I was like sobbing and I said, I was right. They think it's cancer. And I was like crying and my mom was just like, what? Like it was just, that was the last thing we had ever expected was the C word. So I called my mother-in-law at the time. My ex-husband's mom works in a hospital. And she said, hold on, let me make some calls. I'll call you right back. I remember when I called her, she couldn't even understand me. She said, honey, you have to slow down. Hold on a second. I can't hear you. Like she like wanted me to slow down and like, cause she couldn't understand what I was saying cause I was crying so hard. So she ended up calling me back and telling me that there was a doctor who could see me, but I needed to get him, could potentially see me, but I needed to get him copies of my x-rays immediately. So my mom took me to the urgent care. We went and got a CD of my x-ray and I sent it over to that doctor. So Dr. Steinman in Redlands, California, I believe he is still in practice. Wonderful, wonderful man. He was an orthopedic doctor. Again, I think he's still there. I think he's still in practice if you Google him. He ended up calling me himself on Sunday. I want to say he called me Sunday because this was Saturday when I sent over the x-rays. And then Sunday he called me himself and he said, I don't see patients on Monday, but I want you in my office tomorrow morning. And I was like, okay. I was very grateful. But I also knew this is bad if a doctor who doesn't see patients on Monday has now seen my x-ray and wants to see me on his day off. So I went in. I had a friend drive me while my mom stayed with Acacia, and my dad worked. And I think my parents still thought like, there's no way it's cancer. So they were okay with me going with a friend. And also my mom had to be with Acacia. There was no other way around that. So my friend drove me and the doctor, Dr. Simon, had me get an MRI. I walked in and his nurse or MA right away, like front office was like, okay, they knew exactly who I was. Okay, you're going to go downstairs, you're going to get this MRI and then you're going to come back up. So I did the MRI, came back up, and I remember I paid for the MRI in cash because insurance was fighting me. That was another thing. Insurance the whole time in my cancer journey, I was fighting insurance the whole time. So I paid for my MRI with my debit card and went back upstairs and I gave the disc to his front office again. And a few minutes later, they called me back and my friend was with me and he looked at me and he's like, are you okay if I say this in front of your friend? And I was like, yeah, it's fine. So he stopped and, has to get to that moment. And he just looked at me and he's like, it's not good. This was Monday, November 25th. I didn't say that. He never actually said the word cancer, but he did say it's not good. And, going into like, well, you're going to need this and this and this. And I remember him mentioning chemo. And he told me that he had a gentleman on his staff who was a surgeon who had an osteosarcoma and he ended up needing a transplant, like a bone transplant with titanium. He told me the whole story and how he's doing wonderful now. And he went through chemo and this and that. So I knew, okay, it's cancer, even though he didn't say the C word. Just to note, on Monday, November 25th, I was looking through my phone, my Google Photos. I have a screenshot from that day, Romans 8:18, which became my favorite verse through my cancer journey. The pain you've been feeling can't compare to the joy that is coming. So I had taken that screenshot on November 25th. So the Dr. Steinman told me he'd help me. He would try to help me get into a facility that would be able to help me with my specific cancer. He even texted me the next day. I have a screenshot of that as well, saying I'm looking to I am looking to get you in a few places ASAP. City of Hope cannot get you in until January. So that just shows, I mean, he had called me personally and then he was texting me personally. So he was just a wonderful doctor and I'm very grateful to him. Right after Dr. Steinman had told me it's not good, I called my mother-in-law who worked across the street and she told me to come over there right away. So after I had been with Dr. Steinman, I went over to Redlands Hospital and they brought me in and they did ultrasound of like this area, especially my right breast, because the pain and cancer was here and they were worried that maybe I had cancer in my right breast and it had traveled to the bone, because usually when you have bone cancer, it is a secondary source and usually you have cancer in another area and it's now traveled to the bone and you're about to die. Mine just turned out to be a sarcoma rather than bone cancer, like late stage cancer. So they did the ultrasound on my breast. It didn't look like there was any cancer in my breast. So we were just like, okay. So I went home that night. I remember I called my brother, and that was probably the first time I'd ever heard my brother cry, maybe. He was on a trip to Disney World with his family, and my mom we had to kind of ruin his trip. So him and I were talking, and then I told him and he started crying and I just handed the phone to my mom because then I was crying. Let's see. And earlier when I was going through all my notes to prepare for this, it just so you know, it never gets easier being reminded of all these moments because it was very, very difficult time in my life. So anyways, so this was Monday. I had only been there a few days in Temecula. And when I left, I literally left with one suitcase and a couple toys for Acacia because I thought, we'll be right back. We'll be back in a few days, a few weeks. I didn't think we'd be gone very long. I really didn't think I'd never see my house again. So that day, that Monday, my mom everyone now has like a Facebook group for their local community. We had what was called the Temecula Exchange, and my mom had put a post up on the Temecula Exchange saying, my daughter's here. She's not feeling well and I'm taking care of my granddaughter. Does anyone have anything that I could buy or you could donate? And when I got home that evening, my daughter already had so many new things. Like she had a kitchen. I remember there was like a Peppa Pig toy that was dropped off, like brand new in the box. I have a little fuzzy wuzzy. Oh, it's my hair. My mom had told them that my daughter loves fruits and veggies, and somebody actually brought like a bag of fresh produce, which I love. It made my day. I was told I had cancer that day, but just the fact that people were so generous and loving to us, and I mean that was where I grew up, so it felt really nice, especially for Acacia, and that was actually Acacia's first home was Temecula. So let's see. What's next? So that was Monday of the week of Thanksgiving. Then Tuesday, I remember I was fighting with insurance because Dr. Steinman was ordering more tests, but the insurance company didn't want me to have those tests. They were saying no, they were denying me, yada, yada, yada. So the day before Thanksgiving, that Wednesday, my dad was finally like, let's just go and pay for it. Like, how much does it cost? I'll pay for it. Like, I don't care. Let's get this done. So Dr. Steinman wanted me to have a full body CT scan or like I guess like of the organs. So like chest, I should know what this is called because I've had several of them, but I think it's just like chest, abdomen, and pelvis CT with dye, with contrast. So everyone was worried. I think specifically my mother-in-law at the time had said that I might light up like a Christmas tree because, again, they thought that the cancer was bone cancer, a secondary source, and that maybe I would only have a very short time to live. So my mother-in-law, I think she kind of like prepared my dad because my mom was with Acacia, my dad drove me to Redlands, and my mother-in-law worked at the hospital. So she was there to kind of help us. So we did the CT. Dr. Steinman was actually just there at the hospital because he was doing a surgery that evening, and he happened to like see me as he was in passing, and I told him I was there for the testing that he had ordered, and he told me to hold on a second, and he actually ran because, when you get tests done, they make you wait forever for results, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. Like, people are dying to know the answer, just tell them. So I was very grateful because he said, I'll be right back. He ran, like, in between his surgeries, ran to go look at my scan results and came back out and told me it's nowhere else. It's only isolated in your upper arm. And I know for a fact, I'm going to pull it up because I didn't pull this up before I got on here, but I know for a fact that I had asked for prayers the day before I had that scan, or the morning of. It was before that scan. Let me see. Okay. So November 26th. Yes, I had this scan on November 27th. So I wrote to if you happen to follow me back then, my turquoisetx page, I said, I'm in desperate need of prayers. I came home to California thinking I just needed physical therapy and rest. Turns out the Lord has a much bigger battle in store for me. I was diagnosed with bone cancer yesterday. The reason I've been in so much pain and I'm unable to lift my arm is because there is a malignant tumor in the bone of my upper arm. I will need surgery to have that part of my bone removed, and they will replace it with a rod or prosthetic. I'm going back today for more scans because bone cancer is usually the secondary source. There's a very high chance that it is already in another area and it's spread to the bone. Please, please, please send up all the prayers you can for me. I am ready to fight, but I need all the strength I can get. Thank you. So I like to believe that maybe I did have cancer in another area, but because of all the prayers that went up for me, it ended up only being in that one spot. So I do remember my mother-in-law and my dad were so excited, and I was very grateful, obviously, because it was just in the one spot, but I had to remind them, you guys, I still have cancer. Like, it's not like I'm all of a sudden cured. I still have a very long road ahead of me. So that next day was Thanksgiving. Family and friends were stopping by. They were sending things. Dr. Steinman had given me Percocet for the pain. And I remember Percocet made me so sick. I just tell people I'm allergic now. If I go to the doctors now and they say, are you allergic to any medication? I say Percocet, because it made me so nauseous. So Dr. Steinman ended up getting me in with Dr. Tori in San Diego. She is a breast cancer specialist. I'm pretty sure she's also still practicing. So everyone thought that maybe this was breast cancer. And I told you that's why they sent me right away to get the ultrasound, but it was clear. So I didn't really understand why I was going to a breast cancer specialist, but I was like, okay, whatever, let's do this. So when I went to see Dr. Tori, she said, I don't believe you have breast cancer. Like, okay, thanks. But most likely, it's an osteosarcoma. And she told me she was going to help me and refer me out. So basically, she was going to try to help me get to the next steps. I needed a full body bone scan, which she ordered. She also wanted to order a biopsy. And when I talked to Dr. Steinman about that, he told me, no, absolutely not. Do not let anyone touch you for a biopsy until you are with your surgeon. So wherever I was going to end up, he didn't want anyone touching me there because I guess there was a very good chance that if somebody mishandled the biopsy, that it could potentially spread, which was the way he worded it to me. So I turned down the biopsy, but I did the full body bone scan. And all of those tests, all the results for everything ended up going to UCLA. So on Sunday, December 8th, I was doing research and I found that UCLA had a really good sarcoma program. And there was a form submission. I didn't check before I started this to see if they still have that, but there was a submit form, when you're on a website and you're inquiring, we have that on Colors of the Alphabet. And I inquired, I told them, I was just diagnosed. They think it's a sarcoma. I would love to be seen if possible. This was on a Sunday. Not even an hour later, I had an email back. And I can only give that credit to God, because I don't know how I was able to get myself in to UCLA and that quickly on a Sunday. I had an email back from Dr. Bernthal, who ended up being my surgeon, and it said, "Happy to see you. Melanie CC'd here. We'll give you a call tomorrow to arrange a visit." And Melanie was his office manager, maybe still is. I haven't checked on that. And Melanie did call me the next morning. We took the last appointment on a Monday afternoon or Monday evening. I think we took like the 5 o'clock appointment. And my mom drove me 100 miles from Temecula to Santa Monica, where Dr. Bernthal was. I'm pretty sure that day my mom's friend came by to stay, maybe my mom's friend or my mom's cousin came by to stay with Acacia while we left. And then my dad was getting home from work. So it was like they kind of took shifts for me. But I'm telling you, this whole journey, when they say it takes a village, it really did take a village because everybody helped in any way they could. So my mom drove me to UCLA. We waited. It was a long wait, I remember, but it was worth it. I think it had already been dark by the time we got back there to see him. Dr. Bernthal, absolutely amazing. The most amazing bedside manner. He was just so wonderful. I would highly recommend him to anyone. Anytime I hear anything and someone's in California, that's where I would refer them. Even if you're not in California, if you're willing to travel for the best, I would recommend Dr. Bernthal 100%. He looked me in the eye and he said to me, "You can relax now. I'll take it from here and I will save your arm." And he did. He saved my arm. So he went through the process. He told me that it was going to be what they call a chemo sandwich. And basically chemo, then surgery, then chemo. So it was going to be 10 rounds of chemo, 5 rounds surgery, and then another 5 rounds. He said that if this had been in the 80s, if I had my cancer in the 80s, they would have just had to amputate. But medicine has come a long way. So a lot of medical advances now. He did tell me about getting a bone biopsy. He wanted to get that scheduled to find out exactly what kind of sarcoma it is, but he did, based on like the tests he had already seen, he figured it was a sarcoma. We just wanted to find out which one. So I had a biopsy a few days later. It came back as a rhabdomyosarcoma, not an osteosarcoma like Dr. Steinman had thought it would be. A rhabdo is extremely rare. I cannot tell you how many times I heard the word rare on my journey. Rhabdos usually start in the soft tissue, so the fact that mine was in the bone made it even more rare. And this is when things start to get a little fuzzy because my pain at this time was even worse. It just continued to get worse and worse and worse. I was in so much pain, I could barely stand it. I remember Dr. Bernthal had told me that if I ever was in so much pain that I couldn't handle it, to call him and he would admit me for IV meds. I had also begged him many times. Whenever I saw him, I begged him, "Can we just do surgery now?" Like, I just wanted it out of me. I wanted that cancer out of me so badly. He explained to me that we needed to do the chemo first to try and kill the tumor as best as we could before he went in and did the surgery. So, but I hated it. I hated it so much. I was like, why can't we just do it? Because a lot of times you hear about cancer stories and they go in for surgery right away and then they do chemo, or they just do surgery and they don't need to do chemo. So but I had to just trust and have faith. So like I said, this is where things got a little fuzzy. The pain was really bad. Everyone was helping with Acacia. So I had my parents, I had Acacia's other grandmother. We had friends, family, everyone was pitching in to help with Acacia because my mom was coming with me to the hospital. My dad was still trying to work. People would come by and watch Acacia for a couple hours before my dad got home. I remember at this point, I also got a phone call from Dr. Torrey. I remember my mom and I were like driving in LA and my phone rang and it was Dr. Torrey. And she said, "Heather, I'm so sorry. I'm still trying to get you in with Dr. Singh at UCLA. And I was like, I already got in with UCLA. and Dr. Singh ended up being my oncologist. And she couldn't believe it. She had no idea how I got myself into UCLA. And again, I just credit it to God. I don't know how else I could have gotten in without God. And around this time, a lot of people visited that I don't remember. People tell me now, like, oh yeah, remember I visited you when you were going through treatment and when you were about to start chemo? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't. I was up in my bed a lot of times. I think I would like come down or like peek down from upstairs and say hi, but then go right back to bed. I was in so much pain. But I do know with every fiber of my being that I heard God audibly speak to me at this time. I know not everyone has been able to have the opportunity to hear from God audibly. I have. I know sometimes we hear from the Holy Spirit and it's not really like a voice, but it's more like a feeling, and we know, okay, that was the Holy Spirit. But I have heard God's voice, and I clearly remember He said, I will heal you, and you will write a book, and you will speak at churches to share your testimony. And I've always wanted to write a book. So I was like, okay, I could write a book, but I've never wanted to speak publicly. And ever since that day, when I heard him say that, it's like he changed my heart, because all I want to do now is share my story and tell everyone about how God saved me and healed me. So let's see. Let me take a sip of my coffee. Let me see. Okay, there was also a local lady who offered to come and help Acacia. She was retired. She had worked with kids with autism, and she offered to come help Acacia with some therapies while I was in and out of treatment. And she was wonderful. I remember she even made her homemade Play-Doh. She was so wonderful, so sweet. And she came by and helped Acacia a couple times. So we knew chemo was coming. We knew it was on the horizon. So a lot of people had brought a bunch of things by, and I was like gathering everything to make a chemo care package for myself out of all the things that had been dropped off for me. I do remember sitting in my living room, my parents' living room. I think it was a Sunday night, and I remember I had all my chemo stuff out, like on the carpet, like looking at everything that I had, and I was just terrified. I was so terrified. I was like paralyzed in fear of what was coming. I didn't know what chemo was going to feel like. I didn't know what it was going to do to my body. I didn't know how I was going to feel. I didn't know how this was going to affect Acacia. I was so scared. But I will say, when I was younger and just thinking about ever getting cancer, I think when I was younger, this is going to sound really crazy, but I always knew I was going to have a kid with special needs. I knew one of my kids was going to have special needs. I didn't know how many kids I was going to have. I knew one of them was going to have special needs. I always thought Down syndrome. For some reason, God just put this like soft spot for me on my heart for kids with Down syndrome. And I didn't plan this because of this video, but I'm actually wearing Texas All for Down Syndrome. This is Jake Berger's shirt from the Texas Rangers, and Scott just bought it for me for my half birthday. Jake Berger's daughter was born with Down syndrome, so now he does a lot of awareness and fundraisers for Down syndrome, and this was my new shirt. I didn't plan that part of it, but I always felt like I was going to be a special needs mom, and I always knew I was going to get cancer, but I thought I was going to get it later in life, and I did think it was going to be breast cancer. I know that sounds crazy. It's just maybe God was like preparing me along the way, but I don't know where I was going with that. Oh, but when I was younger, I always thought if I ever get cancer, or when I get cancer, because I kind of felt like I was going to. And I also had a really good childhood, and I was always healthy. And I thought, okay, I've had a really great childhood and great early life, that most likely something is going to happen later in life to be challenging, because like nobody just gets through life without challenges. It's just not possible. It's just bound to happen. So I think that was just always my process and my thoughts, like, something's going to happen. I'm going to have a rough adult life, or challenging adult life. So I always told myself I wasn't going to get treatment. I didn't think I would ever want to do chemo. I think I just thought I'd be like, I'm going to just go out. Like, I've had a great life. It's time to leave. But at this point, I had a 2-year-old daughter, and I couldn't just leave her, and she had autism. So I had to fight for her, and I was the only one that was going to fight the way I was the only one who was going to advocate for her like I needed to because I'm her mother. That's just, so I knew I have to keep going. I feel like now I'm like, I can't clearly say my words. Words are hard right now, but I knew I had to keep going for her. So, okay. So on Monday, December 16th, I woke up in excruciating pain, even more than I had already been in pain. So you know how sometimes you're like falling asleep or you're waking up, but you're dreaming and you also kind of like feel like you're falling? I had that happen where I was like maybe dreaming and falling, but then I woke up and so my body like kind of jerked. Even though I was in my bed in a stable place, my body jerked and I must have fractured something again because it was just excruciating. So I called Dr. Bernthal's office and they told me to come on in. So again, my mom and I made arrangements for Acacia and we took off to LA. So they built me like this cast out of gauze and like this metal thing to like stabilize my arm so that it wouldn't move at all, even when I was sleeping. And they put me on IV meds. And then the next morning I had my port surgery and it was like fast track headed towards chemo. It was like, okay, let's just get this started. I met my oncologist, Dr. Singh, who is absolutely incredible. Again, another one I would highly recommend to anyone who needs a good oncologist. And I think obviously he does sarcomas. I can't remember the other cancer he does. I'd have to look that up. I was asked about freezing my eggs and if I wanted more children, because at this point, before you start chemo, if you want more children, you should, or if you've never had children, they're going to talk to you about, do you want to freeze your eggs or do fertility treatment so that you could potentially have children later? Well, I was in so much pain. I wanted to just get this going. And I knew I already I wanted more children, but I was like, okay, I've just got to get going. I have a perfect child at home. She's wonderful. She's a huge blessing. I'm grateful that I have her. Let's just go. So I told them, no, I want to start chemo. I didn't even call my ex-husband to talk to him. I was just like, no, I need to get this going. Like I didn't even have a conversation with him about it. So I was told by my oncologist that he did research on me because, again, I was a rare cancer, rhabdomyosarcoma, starting in my bone, which usually starts in the soft tissue. I was only 1 out of 6 cases that he could find. There were only 5 other cases like me who started in the bone. So he was going to be making a special concoction of chemo, a special cocktail of chemos for me. So on the evening of I had my port input. I think I mentioned that already, but I had to have port surgery. My port was right here. I have to think about that. My scar is right here. And it prevents you from having to get like IVs, or like, okay, so if you're getting chemo, they can't put it in your regular vein because it would just blow your veins. So I think in the UK, a lot of times they do PICC lines. And then the other option is a port. So it's this little port underneath your skin, and they would put a needle through the port, and then it would hook up to an IV pole, and then that's where they put the chemo. So that's what I had done. And then, so on the evening of December 18th, going into the 19th, it was like past midnight when they started, I began chemo. So my first round of chemo was called the Red Devil. It's like its nickname, the Red Devil. It was a red bag of chemo hanging there. And it's called doxorubicin. It's a very strong chemo. I think they use it a lot with breast cancer and sarcomas. You can only have like 3 or 4 rounds of it in your lifetime because it could like really damage your organs. So I did my first round of chemo. So I went into the hospital Monday, and then I was finally able to go home on Saturday the 21st. So I was away from Acacia for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, almost 6 days. I was dying. That was the longest her and I had ever been apart. So I was very excited to come home to her. I came home to my room decorated for Christmas because Christmas was right around the corner. I think if I remember correctly, my mom's friend Carrie had come by and decorated the room. The room that I was staying in was my brother's old room, and then Acacia was in my old room from when we were growing up. I could barely eat. So right after chemo, it's really difficult to eat. I know everybody's different. All chemos are different. Everybody gets affected differently. So this was just my story. But I had alarms for meds every 2 hours, even in the middle of the night. It was like every 2 hours or so. My mom was basically my nurse. We had this like cabinet at the top of the stairs, and it went from being like, I don't even remember what used to be in there, maybe like knickknacks, or I know her sewing kit was always in that, maybe towels, I guess like a towel cabinet. And when I started my cancer treatment, she completely transformed it into all medications. So at the top of the stairs, it was all of my medicines. And she would like put out a little tray on my bed at night with these little cups and little Post-it notes of what to take at what time. And I would have my alarm set. So I'd wake up at 12, at 2, at 4, at 5. Like it was crazy. I have screenshots of my alarms. Because if I missed a dose of Oxy, I was on Oxy and morphine because the pain was so bad. If I missed a dose of Oxy, the pain would just be unbearable. It was really bad. So on Christmas Eve, I had a friend of the family come to our house, and she cut my hair for me because my hair was probably about this length when I went through chemo. And then right at Christmas Eve, she gave me like a cute little bob because I knew my hair was going to fall out. I didn't have time to prep for the cold capping and all that a lot of people have used. Which I think is wonderful. I wish I had the time to prep for that. But I just got thrown into chemo so quickly because of my pain level and the opportunity to be in the hospital and just saying, let's just go for it. Starting chemo was more important than saving my hair, even though losing my hair was probably the hardest part of my cancer journey. Just going to say, because my hair is a part of me and part of my identity. I love it. I'm so glad to have hair again. So for Christmas Eve dinner, I had a biscuit and mashed potatoes my parents brought to me in my bed, and I couldn't even keep it down. I don't even think I went downstairs for Christmas Eve. I think I was in my room the whole time. I remember my dad came and brought Acacia in to say goodnight. I have a picture of her like saying goodnight to me for Christmas Eve. Around the 29th, I think, so about 10 days after chemo, I was finally able to start keeping food down a little bit better, but I was still not eating that great. Between rounds 1 and 2, I think I lost like 18 to 20 pounds. And that was about a 3-week gap. It was bad. And I might repeat this on the next video, but when I went to my appointment, my follow-up appointment between rounds 1 and 2, my oncologist PA was like, why haven't you reached out for like meds, like anti-nausea meds? I was like, I didn't even know that was an option. So I didn't even know I could be calling them. I didn't know I could ask them for specific meds or telling them, hey, I feel this way. Can you put something in for me? I didn't know. So I couldn't keep food down, and I lost I think it was 18 pounds. So anyways, I'm gonna, that New Year's Day, so a few days after Christmas, I woke up to New Year's Day 2020, which it's so funny how 2020 ended up being like this incredibly weird year for me, but it was also incredibly weird to the whole world. So I was actually glad that like if I was going to have to go through cancer, at least I was going through it at the same time when everyone else was locked in. And I mean, we didn't know it at the time. In January 1st, 2020, we didn't know it was coming, but I woke up on New Year's Day with a clump of hair on my pillow. So I said, let's just do it. I knew it was time. I knew it was happening. So I shaved my head on New Year's Day, 2020, while Acacia was taking a nap. So I'm going to end it there for part 1. We're almost at an hour, which I had a feeling I was going to get about an hour worth of talking in with all that information. I just don't want to go too long, so I'll split this up into 2 parts. I really, 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 really hope and pray that this is going to upload well, because the last time I did a live on a Monday afternoon, it didn't end up uploading the whole thing. So, well, I appreciate you watching. I will probably plan to do part 2 sometime this week. I think I could get it done one morning before the playground opens. And then a week from today, I have asked Scott if we can do a joint video. Like, I'll figure out how to do like a adding him in. I've got to look all this up because this is so new to me, but I'll figure out how to add him in, and then we can talk about our playground journey and how we got started and just the process of opening the playground. And so also very exciting. We were in the Fort Worth Telegram on Friday. It came out. I have it on our Instagram and our Facebook. If you go to our Instagram page, Colors of the Alphabet _NRH, the Star Telegram post, let me get that in the camera. I've got the link in our bio if you'd like to read it. I've got the link on our Facebook page if you'd like to read it. So yeah, that was very exciting. Okay, thanks for watching. I will post the part 2 later in the week, and yeah, really appreciate you tuning in. Have a good one. I don't want to mess this up. I don't want to lose this because it was such an important video. So let me make sure I upload it correctly.